you can't find a manager anywhere that enjoys managing more than playing. It's not even close. This is, I've said from day one, this is second-hand thrills. Whereas you used to go out on a Saturday and enjoy and hopefully play with a smile on your face, look forward to scoring a goal or being in the bath after a good win. What you do now is go and sit and chew your nails in the stands.
Second-hand thrills may be, but Jor Royle is now the second longest-serving manager in the Premier League behind Brian Clough. He joined Oldham in 1982, and in the past 3 years they've emerged from the shadows to compete alongside their illustrious neighbours in Manchester.
Henry's cross, flicked on and in by Sharp! What a very, very good instinctive finish from Graham Sharp.
Redford. Marshall! 2-2! Can you credit it?
Oldham's skyline pays tribute to its past, not as a football town, but as the centre of the cotton industry during the 19th and early 20th century. Most of those mills have closed now, but it was from Pine Mill that the town's football team emerged. They were Pine Villa, founded in 1895. Elected to the league in 1907 as Oldham Athletic, they played their first ever game in Division 1 3 years later. But since then, they've only spent 11 seasons in top-flight football. Until Jor Royle's arrival, Oldham's only achievements were an FA Cup semi-final against Aston Villa in 1913 and Division 1 runners-up 2 years later. Success that season depended upon Oldham's last 2 games at home to Burnley and Liverpool. They lost both, and Everton took the title by a single point. 75 years later, Jor Royle took them to their second FA Cup semi-final during Oldham's finest ever year, 1990.
We had this amazing season here where a club with no cup tradition at all had queues going off in 2 different directions for 2 different cups, and then one down the middle for the next league game.
We were very, very disappointed that we didn't get, you know, through that into the 2 finals that year. I mean, we were very, very pleased we got into 1, but we definitely thought that we were the better team over both the legs.
By the time a proud Royle led the team out at Wembley 3 weeks later for the Littlewoods final against Nottingham Forest, Oldham were indeed a tired side. They lost 1-0 in a poor match, but they had arrived as a footballing force to be reckoned with.
I was proud of what we'd achieved because the mailbag we received from all over the world, people who saw us on television and people who were wondering about this little town sort of 6 and 7 miles from Manchester, and now knew that we had a football team as well. And we'd taken on the best and beaten, in some cases, the best. And all of a sudden, Oldham Athletic were on the map. And that season financially gave us the base for the following season, which was the promotion season.
Back in Division 1 for the first time in 68 years, and only a stone's throw from the big boys in Manchester, the problem for Oldham was always going to be attracting enough fans to Boundary Park, instead of them making the short trip to Old Trafford or Maine Road. But Royle believes the tide is beginning to turn.
We used to look with envy and look at the 2 Manchester clubs and their gates, but we've trebled our gates, you know, during the years, so we must be taking them from somewhere. And there's also a big Leeds United influence around here, you know, which isn't too far away. In fact, we were at one stage, I don't know if it's still true, officially the most accessible ground in the country. But the other side of that is it's also very easy to get out of Oldham. And I reckon that once, I think you could reach in excess of 20 clubs within 1 hour of Oldham. So there were all kinds of fringe supporters leaving the town on a Saturday instead of coming here. A lot of those fringe supporters are coming here now.
One fan steeped in the club's history, perhaps more than any other, is their official historian, Stuart Beckett. His house is a shrine to the club. He's written a trilogy of books on the Latics, the first appropriately called The Team from a Town of Chimneys. And he's convinced there is a solid base of support upon which to be built.
There's always been a hardcore support of 4,000 to 5,000 people, which doesn't sound very many, but I think we get 4,000 to 5,000 people even if we dropped out of the league, you know. They would always be there. Obviously over the last 2 or 3 years, we've acquired quite a number of floating supporters, if you like, that have jumped on the back of the club's success. I don't mean that to sound disrespectful, but that's obviously what's happened.
I think we have a really good following, and you talk to them and they're always diehards. They've always been supporters of Oldham, and you know, since they were kids, the father's been supporting Oldham before them, and it goes on, and you know, through the generations.
We used to almost know all our supporters. We used to have that personal touch with them, and we're still trying hard to maintain that. You know, we still have a good attendance by the players at supporters club meetings, at junior Latics meetings, things like that. So we're trying hard in that sense to hang on to them. But invariably there are complaints. And when we have big games and tickets to sort out now, we do invariably fall out with people, not for any other reason than we just can't satisfy demand.
Well, funnily enough, supporters club members at a local sports forum brought up the subject of tickets for Oldham's away game at Manchester United, and director Peter Chadwick confirmed the problem that a growing support creates.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but the fundamental problem is we've only got 600 tickets and we've got 8,000 season ticket holders. So we felt it appropriate to give them the first opportunity.
Any question about the world of football was fired at the top table. Three players, Andy Ritchie, Ian Olney and Neil Poynton, were certainly on occasions put on the spot.
If you had to recommend to the manager a player who could replace you in your position and do a better job from the existing English leagues, who would it be?
Terry Phelan's doing it already. I think you've got to look at the best there is in the country and think to yourself, well, I want to get up to his standard. And the best at the moment in the country is Stuart Pearce. So he does everything, he defends, he scores goals, and as a defender and everything, that's all you can ask.
The obvious person that I've seen over the last few years is Dean Saunders, who can score goals left, right and centre. Great player, I think, personally.
Yeah, it's money, no objects. Van Basten's been bandied about, so I mean I think he's a complete centre forward. I think he's a superb player.
It was Peter Chadwick, though, who fielded the really serious questions, like how are Oldham going to hang on to Jor Royle and who'd replace him if he left?
They put Joe in the top three managers in the country, so it'd be very difficult for us to replace him here. I mean, the way he operates, I mean, he's very shrewd in the transfer market. He certainly helps us to balance the books. So it would be a very difficult act to follow.
Royle was offered the job at Manchester City in 1990 and invited to apply for the England job. So why does he stay at Oldham?
I have probably a unique relationship with my chairman and my board. I like to think with the supporters here too, and we're still progressing, you know. And before you move anywhere just for the sake of it, you've got to make sure that you move into something better. And what we have here is very, very good.
When it was rumoured that we were going to be going to Man City, we played Blackburn Rovers on the Friday night, and it was as if somebody died. It was deadly, and you could hear a pin drop. And when Jor Royle came out the night after the game, it was snowing heavily, and there were a lad stood outside on Sheepfoot Lane outside the entrance, and he'd stood there and he was covered in snow with no coat on, and he begged Jor Royle not to go. And I think Jor Royle more or less said that was what persuaded him to stay here.
The things that beckoned at Maine Road, the sort of greater spending facility, if you like, and the greater team-building facility had to be weighed against the club having its greatest season in history. And I've always said to the players here that if you've got to go, when you go nicely. A lot of them still come back. They're still friendly with the club, still on good terms. And I couldn't really have gone and walked out in the middle of the biggest season in the club's history.
I don't think he'll leave. He's got it too good here. He does what he wants. It's a little bit like Jor Royle's, in managerial terms, like John Fashanu in football, where John Fashanu does what he wants outside and they don't restrict him, and Jor Royle can do it here.
But no regrets?
No, not at all. I mean, no, you don't look back, do you? We're looking forward, not backward.
There's a few different accents in the Boundary Park dressing room these days. Gunnar is the only Norwegian one, but it's a sign of the time that what could be described as unfashionable clubs like Oldham can now attract overseas stars. Haller's in his second full season at Oldham, and he's come back from a broken leg with a vengeance for both club and country. Gunner's convinced that his time at Oldham has toughened him up and improved his all-round game.
I think I've improved because the games we play in England is quicker and faster, and the tempo is higher. So I think if you do a mistake in the Premier League, you get punished straight away. And maybe if you do that in Norway, you don't.
He's done very, very well because obviously he was thrown into it when we had to replace Dennis Irwin, who had sold to United, and Gunnar came in at a comparatively cheap price, although he was an established Norwegian international, and has done very, very well to the extent that when he was injured all last year, we missed him immensely.
He's very, very strong. He's, you know, very quick. He doesn't look as quick as I think he probably is. But he is a strong player and he's good technically, which all the, these European and foreign players seem to be.
He's got good vision, for he can play defence, he can play wide right, and he's not frightened to take people on. His skill-wise, he's probably the best at the club as regards like his touch and everything. And there's not many that can match him in the Premier League, I don't think.
Gunnar played the biggest game of his career just a month ago when Norway came to Wembley. But such is the Scandinavian knowledge of English football, he didn't feel the need to tip off his countrymen about his regular weekly opponents.
I think, yes, it's a few different accents, so sometimes, especially in the beginning, it was a little bit difficult to understand, but I think I can manage that now.
You don't miss any jokes, or?
No, I think I get most of them, yes.
I think sometimes he sits and looks and can't make head and tail of the different dialects, because you'll have Scousers, Geordies, Yorkshire boys, all kinds, Lancashire lads here. But overall, he's mixed in very, very well. And he doesn't jump up and down and make a big noise himself, but he's certainly very settled in the place.
Two Norwegian complaints about Oldham.
It's maybe a little bit too much rain, too windy.
Well, Boundary Park is the highest ground in the Premier League, so the north wind and every other wind tends to howl in from the Pennines. The day I got there, though, it was almost tropical.
This is easy today. This is a breeze. This is not what you call a proper Oldham wind. I have sat in the stands on occasion and seen all four corner flags moving in different directions. So, no, this is not what you call a wind.
But I'm sure one or two of the southern softie clubs must come here in the depths of January and February and think, I don't fancy this much.
Well, I wouldn't say the southern softies, because certainly Arsenal are no softies, but we've always said in the past that when we've been having a bad time, the Russian winter has come to save us, and we've seen all four elements in 90 minutes here in some games, and it can be very much like that under the Pennines.
Oldham had another secret weapon until 18 months ago. Along with Luton, Queen's Park Rangers and Preston, they experimented with a plastic pitch. It was laid in 1986 and dug up at the end of the 1991 season.
I think we were very good on the plastic. I think we would have given anyone in the world almost a game on the plastic, because we had it off to a fine art. And generally when sides came here, they had what I used to call a knot in their heads about the pitch before they started. So we had an advantage, but most of it was in the opposition's mind.
One former Oldham player now in his benefit year with the club could be excused for worshipping the surface. Frank Bunn scored 6 goals in one game, a League Cup record against Scarborough in 1989.
Well, it's still quite vivid. I mean, something that you don't tend to forget. It was an amazing night, and just everything seemed to connect. And every time I touched the ball, it just seemed to be in the right place, and it kept going in.
It's kept going in for Oldham this season. The only trouble is at both ends. The Oldham faithful certainly don't suffer from lack of entertainment. They've had 5 threes, 4 twos, 3 alls. But they are still looking for a single league away win this season, and that's certainly dented their recent form.
It has been somewhat of a feast or a famine, as you saw in the televised Sky game. We missed so many open chances that, we could have still been scoring freely.
Jor Royle has got a million gags about it. He says if we get 4, we might get a draw. Here could be number 2. For Marshall, is it? No. Point. Marshall is onside. Ian Marshall for Oldham against Neville Southall. And panic set in at the end. Marshall, it was a flick from Sharp. It's Ian Marshall and Southall, this time with a save.
Unlike those at bigger clubs, Jor Royle doesn't live his managerial life with his head in the hangman's noose, but he is still expected to be an achiever.
It's a different kind of pressure. It's an appreciated pressure because the supporters know that we're not going to win the league this year, but they know that on our day that we'll frighten one or two, and they look forward to the big days. I think also there's still a honeymoon kind of feeling whereby they've waited so long for Liverpool and United and all the big boys to come here that they do truly appreciate it. So there's not the same kind of pressure, but believe me, I mean, there is a personal pressure. You know, it's not an easy ride by any means.
Oldham's last game brought them up against Premier League pace-setters Norwich City, and the significance of the opposition wasn't lost on Royle.
The potential for Oldham is to do, I always use the likes of Norwich and Notts Forest as good role models for us, because they're not really what you call massive city clubs, but they've all done very well. They've reached Wembley, and Norwich nearly won the championship a few years ago, and they're going well again this year.
That's a lovely ball. Calderhouse with the cross, must be a goal, and is for Robbins. They've got the goal, and Mark Robbins gets his first goal after 7 without one, and Norwich, with their first really menacing attack, are 1-up. Henry's cross, flicked on and in by Sharp. What a very, very good instinctive finish from Graham Sharp. Fox is onside. He has Robbins in the middle. That's the perfect ball. Must be a goal, and is. Now that really was very well done indeed by Norwich City. Flicked on, and Marshall, one-on-one with the keeper. Is this the goal for him? Yes! Ian Marshall makes it 2-2. Phillips. Still Norwich. Robbins sniffing his hat-trick maybe. He's got it! He's got a hat-trick! And that's the goal, I'm sure, that is going to put Norwich City back on top of the Premier League.
To lose in the last minute like that the way we did, a goal we thought we shouldn't have conceded anyway. We've come away with nothing, you know, when we should have had at least a point. But as I say, fair play to Norwich. They kept playing their way. They kept passing the ball. They passed it better than us on the night. But it was still a little bit harsh.
What of Gunnar? Well, his duties on the night proved to be more defensive than he'd normally have liked, but he looked a class player, and in these inflationary times, a slip at £280,000. Another decade of Oldham's royal ruler would be more than welcomed by everybody associated with the club. In fact, in these days, it's unusual to see such a united royal family.
He's the best manager I've ever played under. He keeps you well informed. He's always talking to you. He helps you through things. You know he's the boss.
At the time that he's been here over the last 10 years, you can't fault the man at all. He's been superb for the team. Superb for the team.
Probably the only regret I'll ever have in football is I never signed for him earlier.
We're never going to be a Manchester United or a Manchester City or an Everton or a Liverpool, and then the big London clubs, we know that. We have too many years to make up on them. But we can certainly aim to be a Norwich or a Notts Forest.